On to greener pastures, as they say. It was down through Spokane and across Idaho, then Montana, and very soon we were racing the weather right along under the Canadian border, through Columbus, Still Lacs, and then we were in Bottineau County, and soon home. We'd made the most of the trip that summer without putting up the car hood at all. We got home just in time, it turned out, for the Army to remember Henry had signed up to join it. I don't wonder that the Army was so glad to get my brother that they turned him into a Marine. He was built like a brick outhouse anyway. We'd like to tease him that they really wanted him for his Indian nose. He had a nose big and sharp as a hatchet, like the nose on Red Tomahawk, the Indian who killed Sitting Bull, whose profile is on signs all along the North Dakota highways. Henry went off to training camp, came home once during Christmas, then the next thing you know, we got an overseas letter from him. It was 1970, and he said he was stationed up in the northern hill country. Whereabouts I did not know. He wasn't such a hot letter writer, and only got off 2 before the enemy caught him. I can never keep it straight which direction those good Vietnam soldiers were from. I wrote him back several times, even though I didn't know if those letters would get through. I kept him informed all about the car. Most of the time I had it up on blocks in the yard, or half taken apart, because that long trip did a hard job on it under the hood. I always had good luck with numbers, and never worried about the draft myself. I never even had to think about what my number was. But Henry was never lucky in the same way as me. It was at least 3 years before Henry came home. By then I guess the whole war was solved in the government's mind. But for him, it would keep on going. In those years I'd put his car into almost perfect shape. I always thought of it as his car while he was gone, even though when he left he said, "Now it's yours," and threw me his key. "Thanks for the extra key," I'd said. "I'll put it up in your drawer just in case I need it." He laughed. When he came home, though, Henry was very different. And I'll say this, the change was no good. You could hardly expect him to change for the better, I know, but he was quiet, so quiet, and never comfortable sitting still anywhere, but always up and moving around. I thought back to the times we sat still for whole afternoons, never moving a muscle, just shifting our weight along the ground, talking to whoever sat with us, watching things. He always had a joke then, too, and now you couldn't get him to laugh, and when he did it was more the sound of a man choking, a sound that stopped up the throats of other people around him. They got to leaving him alone most of the time, and I didn't blame them. It was a fact. Henry was jumpy and mean. I bought a color TV set for my mom and the rest of us while Henry was away. Money still came very easy. I was sorry I'd never fought it, though, because of Henry. I was also sorry I'd bought color, because the black and white pictures seem older and farther away. But what are you going to do? He sat in front of it, watching it, and that was the only time he was completely still. But it was the kind of stillness that you see in a rabbit when it freezes and before it will bolt. He was not easy. He sat in his chair gripping the armrest with all his might, as if the chair itself was moving at a high speed, and if he let go at all, he would rocket forward and maybe crash right through the set. Once I was in the room watching TV with Henry, and I heard his teeth clicking at something. I looked over and he'd bitten through his lip. Blood was going down his chin. I tell you right then I wanted to smash that tube to pieces. I went over to it, but Henry must have known what I was up to. He rushed from his chair and shoved me out of the way, against the wall. I told myself he didn't know what he was doing. My mom came in, turned the set off real quiet, and told us she had made something for supper, so we went in and sat down. There was still blood going down Henry's chin, but he didn't notice, and no one said anything, even though every time he took a bite of his bread, his blood fell onto it, until he was eating his own blood mixed in with the food. While Henry was not around, we talked about what was going to happen to him. There were no Indian doctors on the reservation, and my mom couldn't come around to trusting the old man Moses Pillager because he courted her long ago and was jealous of her husbands. He might take revenge through her son. We were afraid that if we brought Henry to a regular hospital, they would keep him. They don't fix them in those places, Mom said. They just give them drugs. We wouldn't get him there in the first place, I agreed, so let's just forget about it. Then I thought about the car. Henry had not even looked at the car since he'd gotten home, though, like I said, it was in tip-top condition and ready to drive. I thought the car might bring the old Henry back somehow, so I bided my time and waited for my chance to interest him in the vehicle. One night Henry was off somewhere. I took myself a hammer. I went to that car, and I did a number on its underside, whacked it up, bent the tailpipe double, ripped the muffler loose. By the time I was done with the car, it looked worse than a typical Indian car that had driven all its life on reservation roads, which they always say are like government promises, full of holes. It just about hurt me, I'll tell you that. I threw dirt in the carburetor and ripped all the electrical tape off the seats. I made it look just as beat up as I could. Then I sat back and waited for Henry to find it. Still, it took him over a month. That was all right, because it was just getting warm enough, not melting, but warm enough to work outside. "Lyman," he says, walking in one day, "that red car looks like shit." "Well, it's old," I says. "You gotta expect that." "No way," says Henry. "That car's a classic. But you went and ran the piss right out of it, Lyman, and you know it don't deserve that. I kept that car in A1 shape. You don't remember. You're too young. But when I left, that car was running like a watch. Now I don't even know if I can get it to start again, let alone get anywhere near its old condition." "Well, you try," I said, like I was getting mad. "But I say it's a piece of junk." Then I walked out before he could realize I knew he'd strung together more than 6 words at once. After that, I thought he'd freeze himself to death working on that car. He was out there all day, and at night he rigged up a little lamp, ran a cord out the window, and had himself some light to see by while he worked. He was better than he had been before, but that's still not saying much. It was easier for him to do the things the rest of us did. He ate more slowly and didn't jump up and down during the meal to get this or that or look out the window. I put my hand on the back of the TV set, I admit, and fiddled around with it good, so that it was almost impossible now to get a clear picture. He didn't look at it very often anyways. He was always out with the car or going off to get parts for it. By the time it was really melting outside, he had it fixed. I had been feeling down in the dumps about Henry around this time. We had always been together before, Henry and Lyman, but he was such a loner now that I didn't know how to take it, so I jumped at the chance one day when Henry seemed friendly. It's not that he smiled or anything. He just said, "Let's take that old shitbox out for a spin." Just the way he said it made me think he could be coming around. We went out. It was spring. The sun was shining very bright. My only sister, Bonita, who was just 11 years old, came out and made us stand together for a picture. Henry leaned his elbow on the red car's windshield, and he took his other arm and put it over my shoulder, very carefully, as though it was heavy for him to lift, and he didn't want to bring the weight down all at once. "Smile," Bonita said, and he did.